Good morning, and welcome to week 3 of your strategic management class here at Newman University. Today we've got some real exciting content to go over, and something that I feel like I have a lot of experience and can hopefully bring a lot to the table, help you bridge some gaps. We'll be looking at Chapter 5, Business Level Strategy, and Chapter 6, Business Level Strategy and the Industry Environment. So both of those are really good and really eventful topics. I also will have a couple of really good supplemental videos that I will post to announcements. One is on White Castle, the White Castle burger chain, and the other one is on Aldi. And both of those really help backfill the content that we're talking about for this week. So to start off on Chapter 5, Business Level Strategy, we'll talk about, and again, I'm not going to go through everything in the text. You can read the text and you can look over all of the content in there. I'm going to key in on just a few things that I feel like are really important that are worth noting and that I might bring some experience to the table and help with. First thing is difference between low cost and differentiation strategies. Low cost strategies, good example of those might be Southwest Air, Walmart, dollar stores, Motel 6, Taco Bell, for instance. Differentiation strategies, a few examples might be Apple, Amazon, BMW, Case IH agricultural equipment, which is what I used to be a dealer for, Disney, especially particularly their vacation properties, their amusement properties. And both of these can obviously provide very distinct and very profitable competitive advantages. However, both of them have their disadvantages as well. So we'll look at what some of those challenges might be. Because obviously, if you can get a low-cost competitive advantage in your position that way, obviously some huge advantages for companies like Walmart, dollar stores, things like that. Same thing with differentiation, but there are some concerns on both of those that I want to kind of highlight. Let me give you an example. First, on Walmart. I think many of you are aware that Walmart really ruled the roost for probably the better part of at least a couple of decades, maybe even up to 3. But in the last 10 or so years, they have kind of had their challenges. And it's come from at least a couple of fronts. One has been via Amazon.com and online shopping. And the other is from the dollar stores. I'll never forget when I was teaching in the 90s, I would have students, and there was a lot written at that time, that there should be legislation passed to put constraints on Walmart. And I would tell my classes at every turn that that was totally unnecessary, because what Walmart was doing was not rocket science. They were buying for less and selling for less, right? Now, they obviously put together some infrastructure, they put together a business model that made them very good at what they did, and they crushed a lot of small retailers around them, but in and of itself, what they were doing was not rocket science, and it was either going to be emulated by somebody or somebody would go completely around them. Well, both things happened. The dollar stores and some other retailers, particularly the dollar stores, kind of out-Walmarted Walmart, if you will. They actually took it to Walmart on their own turf and had an entirely different business model, and it's been emulated by a few different entrants in that dollar store category. There's a $5 or less store, I think, that just opened up on the east side in Wichita. There's a number of them that have done very, very well in that segment and really taken it to Walmart on their own turf, if you will. Amazon, on the other side of it, just completely went around them. And that's the other thing I predicted would happen, is somebody would just find a way completely around and not through Walmart. And that's what happened with online shopping, and that's what happened with Amazon. So now Walmart's in a position where they're having to kind of play catch up. The second area, differentiation strategies, competitive advantages, seems to be the better of the two. However, the cycle of differentiation and the advantages of differentiation are getting much shorter, much more compressed than they were. I kind of refer to this as the Tiger Woods effect. If any of you followed his career, or if you follow golf, you know that when Tiger Woods came on the scene, he took golf to a completely different level. And it took about the better part of 5 years to a decade for the industry and for the competitors to kind of catch up, but they finally did. And Tiger Woods was still a phenomenal golfer. He was still one of the top golfers in the world, probably the top still, but the gap was closed substantially, and Tiger Woods was not having his way with the golf tours near as much as he had been. So businesses are very adaptable, and businesses are very good at copying products and strategies, because for everything that you can patent, for everything that you can copyright, there are many, many more things about a business model and business plans that you can't secure, that you cannot protect. And so these things are out there. Businesses learn from each other. It's part of kind of the cycle of business, and it's actually a good thing for the overall economy, but it does keep businesses on their toes, and they've got to be constantly challenged to keep innovating and keep moving forward. So this copying, this imitating of strategies and products is happening quicker than ever. So a competitive advantage that you have based on differentiation doesn't last near as long as it once did. The other thing on strategy, and I had actually not heard this term before, so I thought it was kind of interesting. I had to kind of read it myself and kind of learn about it a little bit, called the blue ocean strategy. I don't know if that's relatively new or if I just haven't run across that, but it was interesting. But the blue ocean strategy is building competitive advantage and redefining product offerings through innovation. And the reason they refer to it the blue ocean strategy is because it's like being in blue, uncluttered, clean oceans with not a lot of activity in it. So you've got a pretty wide berth and you have a lot of room to move. If you think of the Apple smartphone and tablets, they did this to both the computer and the phone industry, right? Well, it definitely redefined the entire landscape. Apple definitely had a tremendous first mover advantage, but in light to what I was talking about earlier with differentiation, it didn't take long for competitors to copy and imitate and catch up to Apple. So how long did Apple's advantage last? Maybe 3 to 5 years tops. And then they had a lot of competition. So the ocean gets very crowded very quickly once people know there's this blue ocean out there that doesn't have a lot of action in it. So you do get the advantage of the first mover advantage, and you can kind of get that position locked up, and it's yours to lose. But there are plenty that have lost it. Think about MySpace. Think about some of the computer companies that were maybe there earlier that kind of tended to lose their advantage. The predecessor of my manufacturer, Case IH, was International Harvester. And at one time, International Harvester owned the agricultural equipment business, and they were the premier manufacturer in that realm. Well, they lost it, they blew it. Deere eventually took over, and they haven't looked back. So these first mover advantages, while they're great and they're enjoyable while you have them, you can't get too cocky because they can be lost. Now let's think about Newman University. What's its strategy? Well, it's not low cost. There are plenty of options out there that are cheaper than Newman University. So it would probably have to be in the camp of a differentiation strategy. Smaller class sizes, value-based education, being able to participate in extracurricular activities like sports, choir, things like that, gives students a much more comprehensive and well-rounded experience at a university versus, say, if they were at K-State or KU or Wichita State, where they might not have access to some of those same things. So that sounds great, right? Well, it's still a relatively crowded marketplace. You've got Friends University right across the street from us, and you've got a lot of smaller universities that offer many of the same features. So Newman University, like a lot of these other universities, are really having to try to carve out niches. Now we're doing it with looking at doctoral programs. We're looking at certificate programs. We just started a data analytics certificate program that is going to feed into our MBA program, but it can be taken as its own component if you'd like. So every university is looking for its own little market niche. So moving on to Chapter 6, Business Level Strategy and Industry Environment. Again, I'm not going to go through everything that's in that chapter. You can read that. But I will talk a little bit about industry selection and why it's so key. One of the biggest reasons that industry selection is so important is because there are many studies that point to the fact that over half of business profitability is directly associated and correlated with industry profitability. So it's important to be able to assess and analyze not only a business opportunity, but the industry in which it resides. And there are good industries and there are bad industries. Good industries are kind of accentuated by the following categories or the following advantages. First, they have fewer and better capitalized competitors. Many times this is because of regulation. Think of airline industries, banks, finance, things like that might be examples. And this lends itself to where they're more sophisticated and more disciplined, which can and usually will lead to better profit margins and less turmoil in the industry. Again, some examples might be banking and finance, insurance, medical, pharmaceutical, distribution, things like that might be examples of good industries. Bad industries are highlighted by some of these factors. First is many competitors, not very sophisticated, low capital requirements, so there's little to no barriers of entry and generally low profit margins. Another highlight is there's no discipline in the marketplace or very little discipline. There's no market leaders or signalers that help control and rein in the marketplace and keep it somewhat in check. And even though there are official laws against price signaling, against market control, things like that with competitors, it still goes on in some form or another in many industries. So, so examples of bad industries might be hair salons, small retail establishments, even online retailers might be examples of kind of bad industries that have just a ton of competitors, limitless competitors, very low market barriers or barriers to entry in the marketplace. And then obviously, those are the extremes, and then there are hybrid industries where you kind of go up and down the scale. And it's not that an industry is always in the same place on that scale. There's many industries that change, that evolve. Sometimes even within a decade, this can happen. And so good industries can be turned to bad industries, sometimes in almost eye-popping speeds. And you know, a great example of this is what we're going through currently with the pandemic. Look at how many industries looked really good just a year ago and now look really bad. And let me give you a few examples. The airline industry they were looking great a year ago. Now, I don't know how they punched through all of this. It's going to be forever changed, I think, or at least for the foreseeable future. Event venues, sports and entertainment. Look at Interest Bank Arena. Look at the Wichita Wind Surge, that new stadium they just built. Look at sports facilities that for like the Chiefs and the Royals and things like that. Cruise ship industry, absolutely in horrible straits right now. Movie theater industry, amusement parks. Think about Disney's amusement parks. If any of you have ever been there and experienced that, their entire business model was built around packing as many people as they could in those amusement parks and having you stand shoulder to shoulder, drenched with sweat for hours at a time waiting to get on rides. How's that work in this day and age? Probably not near as well. The list could go on and on. I'll give you another example of an industry that was really good and over less than a decade really turned really bad, at least for us, and it was the industry we were in, the agricultural equipment industry. I'll give you some of the characteristics that led to that. And the reason we got out of the industry wasn't because farming isn't good and wasn't because farmers weren't good or the customers, things like that. It's just they were structural issues. The number of manufacturers and the customers that we dealt with decreased significantly, and so much so that the balance of power in the industry got very lopsided. As the number of manufacturers decreased from probably over 20 at one time to two major ones, John Deere and Case IH, the manufacturers got to where they had so much power over their dealer networks that you almost felt like you were their employee and all you were doing was guaranteeing all their debt and taking all their risk for them. Same thing with the customers. As the customer farms consolidated, you got bigger and bigger customers, and they started to get much, much more power over their dealers that they dealt with as well because of the demands for market share that were placed on dealers by the manufacturers. So you're kind of getting it from both ends. So this power drastically suppressed profitability, and having to attain the market share that the manufacturers demanded, it blew up our leverage. We had to get more and more assets. We had to get more equipment on the lots. We had to chase deals so much more aggressively that it really suppressed profitability, and it blew up the debt that we had to have on a day-to-day basis. And this happened over a 10 to 15 year period of time, and it really got worse in the last 5 to 7 years that we were in the industry. So we saw this, we acknowledged it, we didn't stick our head in the sand. We saw the handwriting on the wall, and we knew we were not positioned well to move forward with the industry dynamics that were evolving and that were rapidly getting into place. So that's when we made the decision to sell our business. And we spotted it early enough, and we were able to get to the exit ramp. We came out well. Our customers came out well. Our employees did. They transitioned into the business that purchased us, and all of them, for the most part, landed on their feet. And so it was a good transition overall, and we were able to get our capital out of that business and move on with our lives in different directions. So anyway, just a couple of examples on chapter 5 and 6 that I wanted to share with you. I've also, in a separate announcement, will be including supplemental videos. One is on Aldi. It's titled Aldi, Why They're So Successful. And it has a runtime of about 11 and a half minutes. I really encourage you to watch this. It's an intriguing video, very easy watch, but it's really incredible the way they have put that business together. And it's very much a low-cost strategy, but in many ways it has elements of differentiation as well. The second video, and it's a little shorter video, about a little less than 5 minutes, is on the White Castle burger chain, and it shows how they capture and sustain their low-cost strategy in a very competitive fast food market. And that title of that video is "We Finally Know Why White Castle is So Cheap." Again, a very pleasant view, and I hope you'll take the time to watch both of those videos. I think you'll learn a lot, and it will definitely supplement and back up the content that you're learning for this week in Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. Well, I hope you all have a great week. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if I can be of help. I really appreciate the assignments you've been turning in. You all have been doing a great job. A lot of good writing, a lot of good topical areas, and great discussion posts. And so I enjoyed reading them all. So we'll look forward to talking to you next week, and keep your eyes out in case I have any supplemental stuff I plug in throughout the week this week. All right, well, thank you all, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week.